What's going on, everyone? We back with another episode all about the data podcast. You already know what time it is. We got another special guest in the building for you, so you already know it's going down. We gonna have some insights for you, and we got the whole squad back with us. We turn it up. We got Lucky, we got Denise, we got Jafar. But it's a holiday right now. I'm about to go turn up after this.
It is not a holiday, sir.
It feels good to have everybody back.
It's good to have the squad back.
About time. Mm-hmm.
And we got a special guest from Google. So you already know we've been turning it up with Amazon, but now we gonna switch it on over to Google. Y'all know I'm a big Google fan. So let's go ahead and introduce our guests.
So we have the beautiful Shashay. She is a data leader at Google, specializing in making Google search a more inclusive and equitable platform for all users. She leans on her curiosity, travels, and multifaceted identity to challenge the status quo personally and professionally. In her free time, you can catch her buying toys for her lab mix, trying new restaurants, trying different wellness techniques, or tending to the 50+ plants that make up her indoor garden. So Shashay, you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, just to give the people more background of who you are and what you do at Google?
And some of the plants.
Plants too.
Okay, I'm gonna take y'all to the plants first because that's like my favorite part. All right, we gotta take this blur off.
We get to see the plants.
Y'all get to see not only my plants,
it's going down.
But
make sure y'all watch this
greenhouse
on YouTube now.
Oh wow!
So
wow!
Oh, that's cool as heck.
I love that.
I love the cases.
Yes. That is cute.
Y'all see my little cheetahs in the background? Jaguars, whatever they are. And then,
your little wallpaper. That's so cute.
That's
cool.
Wow.
This is the baby.
Oh, look at
that. Those are my 50+ plants that I nurture on a daily basis because I am a nurturing person. But for more on background, I studied international relations. Or let me start way back. I'm from Dallas.
Oh, me too. Nice.
Really?
Yes.
Texas in the house.
Okay. Now, did we have to take it that far?
I'm from Houston, so yeah, we live.
Oh, okay. All of Texas in the house.
He's lying.
He is not from Houston.
We have a rule. If it comes out within 3 seconds, it's probably a lie. 3 seconds.
Exactly.
But yeah, so by way of Texas, went to study in Boston, which was very, very cold and different. Made my way down to DC, and that's where people go when you study international relations. Found myself at a think tank, decided I don't want to be poor. So I went into consulting, and that's like where I really started to hone in on most of my data skills. So bounced around at a couple consulting firms doing data analytics for different government agencies, and then decided at that point that, I don't really like the churn that exists in consulting. It's a great opportunity for people that are early career because you can try your hand at a bunch of different topics. So I did data as it applies to like survey data and funding, emergency management, states and local governments. Then I pivoted over to the Navy and did financial analytics, which was cool. I really liked my team. I don't know if I would ever really do financial analytics again specifically, but my team was really great. And then went back and did Homeland Security again before I decided I want to adhere to one person's mission, which is what really attracted me to Google and just tech in general. I think there's a lot of innovation, but at its core, you have a group of people that buy into one mission from different perspectives, have different creative looks on what that mission can look like for their communities, for their internet infrastructure, for really like the entire world. And I thought that was really cool, especially about Google specifically. So that's where I've been for the past 2.5 years.
It sounds cool.
Nice.
Cool.
That's like dope. That, starting as a consultant.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Consulting is a great first job for anyone. When I was at Deloitte, I hope no one gets mad, but they literally would say, like, for the people coming out of college, like, you know nothing, so we teach you everything. Like, it doesn't really matter what your background is. There are a core set of skills that I think you get in consulting, especially like how to work with clients, how to have like polished presentations. There's a lot of organization and structure. So you learn a lot of project and program management, as well as like metrics, all the data terms that you see across the board, but learning how to quantify success in different projects and different inputs, I think, is something that really helps when you are pitching yourself externally outside of the consulting world, to really show, like, I've been able to make this kind of progress, which ties into your resume a lot. That's something that I see a lot in data resumes, is people don't really add numbers.
That's something I learned recently too.
When you're saying consultant, do you mean like you get hired at a company to do their IT consultant, or are you like freelance, like consultant and companies are coming to you?
No. So that is one thing. If you want to do the freelance route, that is incredibly entrepreneurial. I do not have that kind of spirit. But I meant in a consulting company. So EY, Deloitte, Booz Allen.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you mean now. All right, cool. Noted.
Yeah, I really liked plug for Booz Allen. I liked my time at Booz Allen a lot. And I think if you're looking for early data support, Booz Allen is a pretty great company, because they have such a rounded infrastructure around teaching people. They've invested a lot in their data science programs and data science contracts. So there are a lot of opportunities coming up out there.
What was it called?
Nice.
Booz Allen.
Booz Allen Hamilton.
Yeah. I've been seeing
Booz Allen Hamilton
too.
I have too.
Shout out to Booz Allen
program.
Booz. What? Yeah. I say it again. I got tongue twisted.
It's Booz Allen Hamilton. BOOZ.
Booz Allen Hamilton. Shout out to them, representing all the little bit of people out here, so that they can get jobs and get on their merry way. We appreciate y'all. Cool. So since you were a kid or like a teen, were you always like into tech, or what were some of your interests growing up?
Oh, interests definitely diverge from what like my family, of course, wanted. I'm a millennial, so I existed before the internet. And I remember that my parents are both really into computers. My dad had built a shed in our backyard when I lived in Seattle, and that was like a computer lab. He was very much on the hardware side. So at any given point, he'd probably have like 10 different kinds of computers that were all half made, half done, that he was rebuilding or fixing. So I got introduced to tech from like a hardware perspective just because of my dad, but it was also very fun from the like putting a puzzle together. Like hardware has to go in a specific place. Like all of the pieces of the motherboard, all of the wires have a specific place to go in order to be functional. So I really liked the pattern part of that kind of stuff, which really did lend itself to data. I just, being a first-gen American, I'm an Ethiopian American. I was a bit limited by what everyone around me is doing. Like Ethiopian communities are very large in certain areas like Dallas and Seattle. So you kind of get a bit siloed into your community. So that idea of like mentorship and peer networking and stuff was very limited to what everyone wants you to be, a doctor, an engineer, blah, blah, blah. So I wasn't very exposed to anything really in tech, like software, data, product management, IT. I was very focused on like, all right, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to be a creative. So I wanted to study art history. I wanted to go into fashion. I wanted to do all those kinds of things. But I ended up studying human geography, which neither here nor there. I studied it for one semester at Boston University, and the program effectively shut down because I was the only person taking the coursework for it. So that's actually how I got into international relations, because they were like, you're the human geographer. Like, ain't nobody else in this program with you. So you can either transition out or transition schools if that's really what your passion is. So in human geography is a learning about people and their push and pull patterns. So why people move around the world. The geography side of it is a lot of mapping. So you can get really creative with maps. So that was more of my outlet. And so technology for me then became more theoretical. Like, oh, if you have this population in sub-Saharan Africa that doesn't have access to internet, or like, how can you increase mobile banking in this area based on like the pricing for buying data packages and stuff. So everything became very theoretical, until I realized you can't really monetize on theory unless you get like a master's or a PhD, because then no one really cares what you have to say until then. So tech went from being very tangible to very abstract, and then back to very tangible again from the data side of things when I was introduced to, or when I got my first consulting job and landed on a data heavy project.
Okay, cool. So what would you say like drew you to data analytics?
Going back to like patterns and puzzles and things, data, the first data product that I was on, we were pretty much like, here's a bunch of data, a bunch of survey data that we recently stood up to try and measure how states can handle a set of types of threats. So whether it be like active shooter threats or a natural disaster like a hurricane or flooding, we went out and surveyed all of the states in the US, and now you need to like tell us what they told you. So how prepared are they? So the using data to answer the question of how prepared are they, put a new lens on like theory and how to help the world. It actually gave me hard skills and hard numbers to be able to quantify how we're moving towards success. Or in that case, the goal is like, can you effectively handle X scale of X or Y natural disaster? So that felt very real. And I think that was what became very, even more exciting to me, was that the numbers that I was crafting and the slide decks I was making, because you don't really get out of slide deck making no matter where you are in your career. But being able to put numbers on those slide decks to let people know like, hey, this is where you need to like augment your supplies, or this is where you need more training to address this type of thing, or you have, or US state have like X number of cots and this adjacent state has Y number of cots. Maybe you should create an agreement amongst yourselves that if X state has whatever natural disaster and it doesn't impact Y state, y'all will create a way to funnel those costs in between you all. So regionally, at least you're prepared.
Well,
so being able to
sound like a whole lesson right now. I'm digging that. They should have had you in the Google course. Oh man, that course was lit though. But hey, kind of piggybacking off what he's saying. So I want to know, like, because you got drawn into data analytics, and with everything you said, what made you not choose data science over data analytics?
I am not that interested. I probably shouldn't say that, in predicting the future. Like the modeling and the stats. So I use stats in my day-to-day in a way to be able to draw correlations or to understand significance. But I don't necessarily want to like forecast or be able or have to dig into the regressions. I really like the people side of things a lot. And I think analytics gives you more people interaction than data science does.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I'm in marketing, and as you said that, all that went through my mind was marketing, and all that like the forecasting. So now you got me thinking because I was staying away from data science, but I may have to investigate it further now.
No, data science is really great, especially if you want to use your data skills in like other types of roles. So I don't know if you've seen, I've like started blogging about 100 days of product management. And some of those data science skills like p-values, time series can really bolster your repertoire as you're talking to engineering teams and to leadership. So leadership at the high level of data want to understand the progress that we're making towards metrics. But when you're talking to engineers, they want to get nitty gritty into the numbers. So data science actually is at least knowing the terminology in data science can really help you strengthen your relationships working with engineering teams, because they're like, all right, this data set, how do we, what is the loss rate of our classifier and stuff? So data science can really help you build stronger relationships with engineering teams if you want to either go into like technical program management or product management. So if you want to basically use your data skills in other types of roles.
Interesting. I'm signing up today. You got me sold.
How much stuff you have on your plate now? Every time you have a guest, you want to sign up, do stuff that they did or they.
I know, right? My I'm booked all the way till 2036 at this point. So.
I believe it.
What did your parents think about your area of study? Like, were they all for it, or did they think like it wasn't what they?
Heck no! I did not do the traditional route. I don't think my parents respected my decision to do what I wanted to do until I could start helping them out. It was like, oh, okay, you forged a path enough for you to be financially independent, successful, and now you're like giving back to the community and to your family. So that was like, all through college, which is 4 years. It probably took me 2 to 3 years to be successful, or at least financially independent. So 7 years of my life, they disapproved of all my decision making.
I'm so glad you said that, because I be trying to tell people you do not need to rush your process. Like,
you do.
I just made a status about that the other day. Actually, I was like, the money's gonna come. Just focus on gaining the experience and the skill set, and you're gonna kick doors down.
Yeah, you can't beat time, man.
Don't press next in the course just to get the certificate. Run through it. Took me 5 months to take that Google course. 5 months.
I bet you gained so much knowledge. And also, these courses are really great for building portfolios. Like I've been seeing, I love when people are vulnerable on social media. So I saw a post like weeks ago where someone was like, hey, I think they were in the Google user experience design course. And they were like, I'd really love feedback on this mock-up I did. And after that, I saw more and more people start posting the mock-ups that they're doing. And it's like, that is fantastic. Not only are you getting a mock-up for your portfolio, but you're getting real-time feedback from either customers or like users or opportunities from the other side. So people, you're getting like tips and tricks from actual UX people.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I think that helps everyone, like people who's just starting out, people like who's looking for people to hire, like to get an idea of what's going on right now. So
I think that's awesome. Can read through the feedback and kind of see what they would be getting in that same instance.
Exactly.
Most stuff. Oh, I never asked you, what obstacles did you face as far as like getting into data analytics?
And besides your parents, like how was the support, or did you like what made you keep going even though you didn't have their support?
That mug was awesome, by the way. I love that mug.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it is cute.
Okay, obstacles. I would say that I think my parents actually kind of tie into the obstacles. I've faced a lot of imposter syndrome throughout my career, from multiple sides of it. So when someone is telling you that the career path you chose or the education you chose won't lead to success, that's like, especially from people that, let's say, are or parenting takes many forms. The US centric view of parenting is like, you're a cheerleader. They're always at every soccer game cheering you on at the sideline. It doesn't matter any like decision you make. They're always going to cheer for you. But as an immigrant, like your family risked everything. So being here for you to have a different life. So being here and not going on a path of what is traditionally equated to success is scary. So then having that fear of like, can I actually be successful? Can I navigate social media? Can I navigate networking? Can I navigate living in an entirely new city away from everyone? Just already kind of puts a level of fear into you. And on top of that, then the job market as a person of color and a woman tends to downrank your value. So my very first job, actually, they used to host monthly, probably happy hours where they'd like buy out a bar and we'd be there all night, free drinks, free food. And in one of those like drunken nights, someone in HR was like, you know, you're the lowest paid analyst like at the company. I was like, oh, great. And I'm the only Black woman too. So even more wonderful. This sucks. And of course she wasn't supposed to tell me that. So it was just something I kind of internalized, like, why am I getting phenomenal ratings and yet I'm paid less than everyone else? So when I got promoted, like a year and a half, 2 years later, our company was actually being acquired. So not only did I get a raise from the promotion, but because our company was being acquired, they had to normalize salaries and I had to get another salary bump because I wasn't in the band for my peers at that company. So it was like, all right, that's also another shot to the ego. Is that because I don't have a formal data background? Is that because I don't have all these certificates? Like, what is making people feel, or why am I not accurately communicating my value, and why isn't my value being accurately represented in monetary gain? So that's something I struggled with kind of a lot, or not even kind of a lot. And that actually even led into my Google interview. I distinctly remember feeling like I'd never been to San Francisco until my Google interview. So the train at the San Francisco airport like takes you around the city so that you see the mountains, and the sun was setting. And I distinctly remember sitting at the back of the train, looking at the mountains, like, I'll never see these mountains again. I'll never see the sunset again. That interview went so terribly. And then for me to like get a call 2 days later that I got the offer, it was like, oh, wow. So, like even internally not presenting myself from a position of strength because of imposter syndrome, and just my previous experiences, like being underleveled or being underpaid, was something that I wish that people like my contribution to community efforts is to really give people the language for them to be able to articulate their strengths. Because I am someone who doesn't really believe like you need all these certs, you need all of these like things on paper, especially as I am a 2-time grad school dropout. So I have not gotten my master's degree yet. And that's something that sometimes I'm a little insecure about. But I realized that being able to demonstrate my knowledge and the wealth of information that I've collected and that exists within me, and really leaning into my own creativity, is how I'm hoping not to continue carrying imposter syndrome with me as I continue to progress throughout my career.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, don't feel too bad about being the 2 times. I'm a 6-time undergrad dropout, so
I only dropped out 1 time and I ain't trying it again.
It's rough. The older you get to then have to go back to like this very rigid structure. Also, academic situations also really don't care about you. Well, not some grad schools, but undergrad does not care about you as a person. Like I had to work in undergrad. I was dealing with learning what seasonal depression is because Boston was very different than Texas. There's like certain memories that I think everyone has. Mine always relate to nature. I was like on the shuttle on our campus at 3:30 in the afternoon, going from one end of campus back to my dorm room. And I just was astonished that the sun was setting at 3:30 in the afternoon. I came from Texas, where in the winter, the sun still sets at like 7. So like no one at the university caring about these people's mental health. If you have to work, like dealing with all of this unnecessary reading. I actually studied abroad twice while I was at school. One, because studying abroad was cheaper than actually going to my university. So my scholarship covered studying abroad completely, whereas it did not cover me being on campus. But our study abroad programs were situated that internships are built into them. And that was the only time I made Dean's List, because the workload actually is tailored to support you working in a full-time internship. And it was like, so y'all really have the opportunity to make working adults successful. You just choose not to. And that like has really just put a bad taste in my mouth for academia in general. Especially for people of color, first gens, or people that don't have the luxury of not working to be able to go to school.
I never thought about that, to be honest.
But it's
bringing up memories. Yeah, it's bringing up memories of what I went through when I went to college. So
same.
It's pretty deep.
Now, how does your international relations degree correlate to your current role in data analytics?
The only way I can say it correlated in any way is that it taught me how to think about things from multiple perspectives. In international relations, the whole premise is that everyone has a goal and you have to build relationships across countries, whether it be economic, social, technological, military relationships. So everyone has a goal and everyone needs to evaluate what they can contribute, what trade-off they can make. So concessions, where alliances should be formed, where they should do something individually. So it is a very multi-variable space. And I think that has been one of the key skills that it gave me that apply to data, because you're constantly juggling multiple variables, whether you are looking at what variables go into creating a metric, what variables you're going to use to give information, like when you're building a dashboard, what are the variables you want to highlight for your user group? So whoever is going to be using that specific dashboard, is it exploratory? Is it operational? Being able to consider all of the values that go into any type of data structure or data output is really, I think, one of the defining things I take away from international relations.
Good. I feel like that probably propelled you. That seems like that's something that you probably would have had to develop, but because you did it in your degree, that kind of put you a step ahead. So that worked out well.
Yeah. It also actually very much ties into what I do now, which is I focus on product inclusion and equity. And so most FANG companies or tech companies in general really focus on scale. So when you all are interviewing wherever you want to go, most of those companies are going to ask you questions about scaling, increasing profits, really expanding scope. However, product inclusion and equity is, I can't think of the word, but it's in direct opposition to scale, because it means focusing on more niche groups and niche communities. And that is a more altruistic position that companies need to take if they actually want to fix those kinds of problems in their social media platforms or their search engines or whatever it may be. So that frame of thinking has really helped me hone in on what are the variables that actually contribute to inequity and a lack of inclusion in these product spaces.
That's an interesting take, because I know with DEI, you always want to look at what's already there. So having to point out what's not there, that's a good way to look at it.
Reverse data analytics.
Right.
Literally,
exactly.
It's exploratory analysis. So exploratory analysis. And you need to understand, like, where do the people characteristics come in? What are like the operational technical characteristics? And data is a pretty great place for unearthing those inequities, because you just have access to information and you can plot it, you can graph it, you can do statistical analysis on it, whatever you want. And you can make it tell you all the ways we're being great. But if you notice the trends and patterns where there are drop-offs or where there are anomalies or where there are inconclusive results, those are usually like the pain points you actually want to solve for, societally at least, not necessarily at your company too, because that's going to be the antithesis of your success, is if you have like metrics dropping off. But from the social perspective of it, those are really great ways for you to unearth inequities that are happening.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to say your presentation skills are like dope. Like 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
I would agree.
Like you need to tell Google to make you come out with like the Google official how to present projects course. That you be the lead.
Yes.
Success. That's my success metric. Thank you.
Speaking of Google, what was your experience like getting into Google? As far as like any roadblocks that you faced during the hiring phase?
It was very long. So the initial interviews technically are only supposed to have one phone screening, but the positions that I was originally put up for, the recruiter had reached out to me after I attended a Google event. And those positions were more policy focused. So when I was meeting with the hiring managers for those, they were like, I don't really think this is the best fit. The great thing though is if you have a good recruiter, they'll reach out to people in their network to see where they can move you, because Google really focuses on the Googliness. So they want good people working for them. So if at any stage they like you, or you have a good interview relationship, I guess. So that momentary relationship where they're like, yeah, they would be great here no matter what opportunity they're in. Recruiters will help to find opportunities for you. So I had a couple initial phone screenings with different teams. So that kind of elongated the process. But once I actually found a team or an area that could be a really good fit, that part went really fast. I only had one other phone screening interview that was actually probably the only interview I had related to metrics. And my question was along the lines of pick your favorite Google product, which when people are interviewing or when I refer people, I always say, find at least one Google product you really love and really use, because that's going to be the key for you to frame all of your questions around, or when they give you an option for selecting a Google product to grow, scale, deprecate something, that will give you an edge because you know that product in and out because you use it. So mine was Gmail. Use Gmail so much. And
the same thing.
What I did not expect was the next question, which was choose if you want to develop a new classifier for Gmail or if you want to enhance a classifier for Gmail. And I was like, yo, what on my resume told you I know anything about classifier? but I know how like spam filters work. So I started like going in about like using keyword optimization in emails, which then like allowed me to think more creatively about like using use cases. So if I usually get emails about dogs, I have a dog, and I start randomly seeing cat emails, like keywords within cats, kittens, being able to build out a dictionary of terms that may potentially be spam is an opportunity for refining that. So that was like, if this is the tempo, I don't know what's going to happen next, which I didn't. And that goes back to like why I felt imposter syndrome, because I would say that I came in as like a role profile hire, which you have that in consulting too, which basically means you have a set of skills and a personality that we really want and can be very useful, but it's not for a targeted team. There are pros and cons to both types of interview processes. So role profiles give you an opportunity to just break into a company and really navigate the internal system. You at least are getting in, you get that company on your resume, you get the benefits that come with them too. And you can take your time really understanding where you want to move around from there. The benefits of targeted interviews for a specific team are that most of your interview questions are going to be more directed towards the skills you'll actually be using within that team. So you can demonstrate a higher level of role related knowledge. Going back to, if you don't get, or let's do the cons in reverse order. So targeted profile roles, if you don't get that role, there isn't very much wiggle room for you then to be able to interview, or at least your recruiter be able to recommend you for other pipelines and other opportunities, because your interview was so specific to a team and a specific skill set that they were looking for. On the role profile hire, the cons are there's a lot of opportunity for bias to come into the interview process because they're testing you on a range of skills. So role related knowledge then kind of goes down a little bit because each team may need something different. So an example is one of the interviewers that I had during what they call the full loop, which is the multi-interview steps that most companies now call the full loop, whatever. It was called the on-site when I was interviewing, but my on-site interviews, I had someone from the ads team interviewing me, and their question started out, what would you do if an advertiser called you and said that they think someone hacked their account? What in my resume told you I know how to deal with hacking accounts? Like, I don't understand. So there's those kinds of questions that are like completely irrelevant to your skill set. They are marking how you would think about a problem. So my answer was something along the lines of like, I would tell them to change the password. Like, what else do people tell you to do when your account's hacked? And I just like struggled through that interview, which then kind of set a tone. Like I noticed a very tangible pivot in how I was feeling about the interviews moving forward, because I was like, yeah, I know nothing about this. Is this what the next interview is going to be like? So I started questioning my own skill set. So that's kind of like the downside of the role profiles, is they're very, not direct, and it creates opportunity for you to question yourself, for bias to come in on the interviewer's part if they don't think you have enough role related knowledge. But again, there are pros and cons to each of them. So you have to know. Oh, sorry.
Do you think that is more so like a tactic on their part to see how much you're going to stay confident throughout the process, even if you know, kind of like to slip you up and to see if you're going to hold that frame. Do you think that that's one of those things that they were trying to do?
It definitely can be. That particular interviewer actually works in that space with advertisers. So I think for her, it was to see if I would be a fit for her team because I was coming in as a role profile. Like I had a set of data skills that all these different teams needed. So it was trying to see where I would fit the best for those data types. But to your point, that is definitely, I would say as I become more senior in my interview processes, there are a lot more opportunities for people that are trying to see, can you confidently defend your answer? Especially in data. Like if someone tells you to select a success metric, why did you select that metric? And you being able to not only justify your answer, but defend your answer when they're giving you counter metrics or when they're telling you other metrics that may drop if you stay steadfast to your metric. So then you have to go into talking about the trade-offs for those kinds of things.
Okay. That's a good point. I will remember that. That seems like something that'll be helpful in the future. And for when you did get the role, was it your first choice or did you have to transfer essentially teams?
No, I'm still technically on the same team that I started off with. So I work in Google. Well, at that point, I worked across different harms, something we call risks to user trust. So I came in at a really interesting time because I joined right before COVID became a global pandemic. So at that point, we were heavily focused on like misinformation and stuff related to the 2020 election, as was every other company. And then coronavirus hit. And then you had like a massive bomb of new types of threats. Like there have typically been anti-vax content, I'm sure, as you all know, around like autism and the people that correlate autism with early childhood vaccines. So then seeing misinformation around that, seeing a lot of racism as everyone was around like amalgamating the coronavirus with like Asian Americans and all of those kinds of like ethnic related risks to people, or promotion of hate speech or promotion amongst misinformation around that DEI realm. That was really tough. And then, of course, Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. So then we saw a rise in issues and risks to user trust around DEI. So I was working across all of these risks to user trust for majority of my time at Google. But I recently pitched a role. I created a job description for an analyst specifically to focus on product inclusion and equity, which was an offshoot of the work I started doing around DEI and the manifestation of DEI issues on Google search specifically. So I'm technically on the same team because I work with all of the same people. However, I now specialize in building out data infrastructure to be able to collect information around gaps in product inclusion and equity and like offensive results. And not only the infrastructure for capturing it, but then being able to analyze it, generate insights, and then develop recommendations for eng teams, product teams, leadership on how we can make Google search more diversify the results around Google search, make it more inclusive, so less misrepresentation of ethnic identities or nationalities or religions, and make it more equitable in terms of getting people from all different walks of life accurate information based on whatever their query search is.
Okay. That sounds interesting because Google search is probably my most visited URL at this point.
Yeah, I hate Bing. Oh my gosh. Like
I don't even
I'm a system
still
engineer. Like
Yeah, I don't like Bing either. It's not
just
intuitive.
searching for
It's
something.
exactly yeah.
It just all just blows up
Yes.
and goes to hell.
I always laugh when I see the DuckDuckGo advertisements that are like
Oh my
directly
gosh.
targeted at Google. And it's like, okay, but I like Google better still.
Yeah.
And I tried to give Bing this little salt. I was like, all right, cool, I'm on edge. I tried out Bing for like 2 weeks, and I was like, dude, I can't find none of the solutions. Because I'm in IT, so I need to ask questions. And every time I try to ask something, like it just doesn't give me the answer. And as soon as I go to Google, it's like, bro, the answer is
Exactly,
right
it's right there.
Hey, I vouch for Google. You know, it's crazy. I vouch for the Google data analytics course so hard that 3 people from Google actually reached out to me. And one of them,
I believe it.
yeah. And one of them was one of the people that contributed to the course.
Oh, that's nice.
So, yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're real people. I think I saw like a tweet the other day of like, your friend that works at Google isn't better than you. And it's like, we're not. We really are just everyday people that happen to work at this company. But like,
they look at y'all like the top dogs, like the Jay-Z's and the Beyonce's. Like, I want to
the Jay-Z's.
Yeah.
We really, no one in tech is. Everybody's figuring it out together. It's just maybe there had like a set of things that really have to work together for you to get into these companies. And it doesn't make you a better candidate. And it doesn't make you better qualified. Like in my onboarding experience, there was actually a guy who was in jail and didn't get a degree and started using, like, was able to use Google as part of like an education rehabilitation program while he was in jail, and just like learned IT stuff and learned more about Google's infrastructure and classifiers and this. And now he was in my onboarding class with me, no degree, no anything. He learned how to use Google from jail. So it really is a set of things that work together. There is no like tiering of people. There's no elite. There's no more educated, no more certificates, no more even how to talk about issues. Because that's something that like you'll probably navigate is language barriers working at international companies. So being able to communicate is something that is very an independent factor. Like, yes, you need to be able to communicate, but articulate, or the polish of which you articulate things, may not always be what you think is like the best, or, you know, all those presentation skills, like 1, blah, 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 2, blah, 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 3, the things that they like teach you of how to talk about things are variable, especially again, working with diverse audiences. So it's really about who you are. And I think people underestimate, like, are you a good person? If I'm a good person and I'm confident in my ability to learn something, that I think will get you very far in a lot of these interviews.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's good advice. I appreciate that. And then I have one more bit to touch on. I know it's a little bit finicky, but you mentioned having to work during your undergrad. So can you talk about your salary negotiation experience as far as coming from somebody who had to supplement then and then coming over into a lucrative field such as tech?
Oh, yes. So that first job that I told you that I was underpaid. So I was working at a think tank, not being paid very well. So that kind of had me in like a poverty mindset going into my first company, especially because I had to work to like get by in college, to be able to afford all my books, live far away from my family. If I had to travel for an interview, like scraping by. So then to have this very expensive degree and go into the workforce and not being able to make enough money to like live on my own, and not even on my own, like live with roommates. I actually slept on my aunt's couch for like 8 months when I was trying to get into like my first full-time role. So having the burden of like, what if I become poor? What if I actually made a terrible decision in what I chose to study and the skill set I went to go in? I felt like I just needed a job. So I tried to negotiate, and I was making, basically, they offered me 40,000, which also they were like, oh, there's opportunity for more money if you do overtime. Why do I have to do overtime to make the amount of money my peers are making? But like now I can look back from a position of privilege and think that at that point it was like, okay, 40,000 is like not that much money. But I guess I can just work harder or whatever. That's how I like reconciled it to myself, because when I asked for more, the recruiter literally called me back like 10 minutes later and it was like, no, it's a take it or leave it offer. So I was like, whatever. Okay, I guess I'll take it. So then I worked a bunch of overtime. So I ended up making probably in overtime plus bonus, I probably made like 50 or 51 my first full year at that company. Which by the time I was promoted and blah, 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 I ended up making 60,000 there. So then I started really like hearing about jumping companies, which is very controversial. Different people have different opinions about that. But not only did my company become acquired and I no longer just jived with the new company's mission, I was like, I really want to have a role that's more formalized in data. Like I do a lot of data right now, but I'd like to just have the data title related to this work. So that's when I went to Booz Allen and I was able to negotiate like a 20 or 25% increase in my salary. So it just like kept going from there. But even with Google, negotiating was very difficult. I went through 3 rounds of negotiations and it got to a point where I had to just do some like internal trade-offs, because at that point I had a great offer from Deloitte. I had only been at Deloitte for like maybe 6 months when the recruiter reached out to me from Google. And I was like, I've never interviewed at a tech company. Like, let's see where it can go. I didn't necessarily plan to leave. It was just like, am I good enough for this kind of company? And then, I had to do a lot of trade-off negotiation, because if you account for all of the like taxes and everything, let's take equity out of the situation. Let's just talk about base salary. I was making the same amount of money in DC working at Deloitte in my base salary that I would make in California because of how high the taxes are and stuff. So then it became a question of like, do I want the brand name? Is there longevity in this opportunity? Of course, I advocate for stock, even though people can talk about like, oh, tech is bad, this, that, and the third. I think for people of color, stock is a way to generate wealth. And that is incredibly important to me. Like in this side hustle culture, I feel like side hustle culture is very synonymous to that first company telling me I can work overtime to make the same amount of money as everyone, all of my peers. I don't think you should be stretching yourself that thin. I think it then starts eroding your mental and emotional health, but then erodes your core work, which is your big profit, like where you're gaining most of your profit from. So I had to start like thinking about like, okay, if I take this base salary cut to get X amount of stock, what is the value of that stock to me? How much am I saving in my retirement right now? Can this augment that? So I had to do a bunch of mental gymnastics to figure out if just the opportunity that's in front of me meant more. I've really been thinking about making a heat map actually of like all of the variables I consider and highlight in all of the companies I've worked for, and highlighting, doing a heat map of which of the variables were most important to me at each of my companies. Because I think people go into salary and negotiation as if it's like it's very a singular decision, and it's not. at all. Negotiating, you're negotiating thinking about your benefits. You are negotiating thinking about the sustainability or the health of the company you're signing up. Are there increase in how are their stocks doing? What is their vision? Is their vision profitable? Like, what are the areas they're trying to branch out into? So you take a lot of things into account when you are making a decision. And sometimes those decisions really do come in taking a salary cut. Like if you negotiated much higher stock, for example, and were willing to take a lower base salary, the question becomes, how are you using that stock to your advantage?
Right.
And like, is that okay for you? Are you at a stage in your life where you can minimize your current finances or current pay things in order to invest more heavily in your long-term future by getting maybe like another 50,000 in stock? So it's a very personal thing. And Twitter makes it seem like you shouldn't accept no job offer that don't come with this or that or this. It's like, no, that is not how you should be telling people to negotiate.
Yeah, I agree. So going back to like Google and you talking about like how you guys are just regular folks and being a good person trumps anything else that people might have an assumption of. What advice would you have for others trying to get into Google?
What advice would I have for people trying to get into Google? I think if you wanted like a one-way way and not really having to do, I mean, you still have to do the networking thing, but I would say find events. I think, or like if you are in a city that has a Google office, trying to see if those Google offices specifically have like meetup groups or if they're hosting events. Like the Boulder, Colorado office are on Meetup, and they had like a resume editing session with Googlers. So I think finding more unorthodox ways of meeting more Googlers is very helpful, not only for understanding where you want to be in Google. Like I've had a couple people reach out to me recently about strategy and operations roles. And it's like, I work in trust and safety. I don't know anything about that division. I can try and find someone that can give you more insight. There's certain things that I can do, like follow up with your recruiter, but I don't hold weight in that division because that's not the area I work in. So trying to find people that work at Google that are more aligned in what you do, as well as if you sign up for or connect with recruiters on LinkedIn, they usually post more just like meetup virtual opportunities that are going on. So I would say if you aren't really a person that is very like skilled or heavily into the one-on-one networking, being able to go through the events is something that really plays a role. And to Jamar's point, going through the CERT programs, I actually have a friend that is one of the people who developed and is in the program manager Google certificate. So going through that actually creates an entire pipeline, not only to recruiters, but to other peers that may eventually work at Google.
It's cool. I didn't even know like they had those type of events going on. So taking my notes.
Marsha just gave me an idea. We need to throw All About the Data Miami event and invite some Googlers. Let's go.
Yeah. No, so I just moved to
awesome,
Atlanta.
I'm actually in Houston, so but good suggestion though. We'll figure that out for sure.
I'm sure there are people in Houston because we have a huge
He's lying again.
office.
He's keeping his lie from before.
You're so good.
You got the code.
That's what makes it scary. He's so good.
Do not bamboozle our guests.
So easily. It's just his life. He does this.
I'm a comedian part-time, don't mind me. But
are you saying you went to one in Atlanta?
Oh no, I moved to Atlanta recently. So
gotcha.
I'm trying to figure out what this ecosystem looks like actually, because Tanika actually, you all interviewed her and she, I think it's great if you find like a data person. She is my data person. I mean, we're best friends. We both live in Atlanta now. But
Nice.
I would say if I had like one piece of advice for anyone in the data field, it's find your data person. Find the person that's interested in the same data things that you are, because not only can you share resources, but as you guys continue to grow. So I'm at Google now. We both were at Booz Allen. We both were at Deloitte in different realms of both of those companies. So we were able to share internally, but as we've grown in our careers, she went to Mozilla. Now she works back at the Navy, where we both also worked when we were at Booz Allen. You have a built-in friend and accountability partner. So like we used to host events like meetup stuff in DC for people interested in data. We actually started a nonprofit in DC called Blacks in Technology and Consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, we were able to do like pro bono data work for Black owned businesses in the Washington, DC area. So if you have like that one person that's passionate about stuff with you, you all can build your local community and then people will come to you. So being able to throw like, and we weren't even doing like just, these formal like give back to the community events. We threw happy hours. Happy hour is the best way to get people out there. It's the best way to bring a friend to meet some other friends. So I'm trying to see what that ecosystem looks like in Atlanta.
That's actually how I started all about the data and met these wonderful people, except for Jafar. I knew him since I was a baby, literally. Not even over exaggerating.
Not since a baby, for 10 years.
Yeah, I'm only 10 years old. What do you think? What do you want?
Your Discord, your data Discord, that has a popping community.
Honestly, the Discord introduced a lot of people to each other, right? Like Shanice and Lucky and Jafar met each other through the Discord.
It was all
so a challenge. Like when I first made the Discord before it blew up to the 3,000 plus followers that it had now, and it was a little bit more controlled. I challenged people to get into groups and do data projects together. And so
exactly.
Yeah, some people took the challenge, and it's like through that Discord, people have actually become, friends, I guess we could say. And every day new people and it's like people all around the world, like one of our board members is in Nigeria, and it's like we all became like a family through this app. So and and like you said, we don't just only talk about data. We have a fitness section, a mental health section. Sometimes we just come on Zoom just to talk about anything. So it's awesome.
And that's really soul soothing. I don't remember who I was listening to, but someone, some author or something, was saying how someone had asked them, how do you recommend like beating imposter syndrome or something along those lines? And the interviewee said that community is how they beat imposter syndrome. And I think the Discord is phenomenal for that. Having people that affirm you and are invested in your growth and development is really how you tackle imposter syndrome, because even though whatever the situation is that may make you feel inadequate based on your skill set, you then have a home to come back to, and people just soothe your wounds, because it is a shot to the ego and the heart when like you bomb an interview or you wanted to talk about something and everything just disappeared from your mind and you no longer can articulate your ideas effectively to like someone you may have wanted to impress.
That's big facts. And we even have mock interviews in there, and we're actually about to be more consistent. A volunteer from Amazon actually volunteered to host more mock interviews in there. So if you're not in the Discord, you're missing out, because we got a lot of big things going and we trying to build the community. So you got to come through. But we are at the top of the hour. We're just going to get just a few more questions in, and then we'll get ready to wrap up. So I know you You talked about your past jobs a lot, working at Deloitte and so forth. What would you say some of the differences that you noticed since you've been at Google compared to when you were doing consulting?
I thought, because tech by nature is very process oriented and infrastructure based, I assumed moving into tech companies, they would have like ecosystem and infrastructure and processes like down packed. Not the case. Most of these tech companies are very engineering focused. And I mean, it makes sense. You need engineers to build the products that you now have a company based off of. But because of that, there are a lot of disparate teams. And there isn't really formalized training for how to be at least a project manager for your own project work, no matter where you are. So I was brought in to lead an insights work stream. So that's kind of why I worked across many cross-cutting themes in risk to user trust when I first joined Google. And I remember I couldn't find an organization chart literally anywhere. I didn't know who I was supposed to report to. I didn't know who stakeholders were. I didn't know what partnering teams were. And then if I found a partnering team, I couldn't find an organizational chart there. So like something as basic as a chain of command, I was like, why do y'all not have these things?
Would you say that's what made you get your CSM?
No, I would say so contrasting that to consulting, which is extremely programmatic. Do you have a proposal for which you've committed to executing a project or developing this process or setting up this data infrastructure? So you have guidelines in a proposal of things you need to accomplish, which lends itself to a more programmatic approach to all like companies or to your company in general, because you have a guideline of what you've committed to. You don't necessarily have guidelines in tech, especially because, again, it's engineering focused. So it's, I have this idea. Let's see if I can build it out. I can test it. I can do this, blah, blah, blah. Who cares if I document my journey along the way? I'm just going to prototype this out. And so I got my CSM because I had all of the skills based on my consulting experience. I just didn't have what I would say is the recognition for those skills. So something my team very quickly became aware of, and people would comment all the time when I was at Google, was that I have really great like programmatic structural skills. So I was writing documents for everything I did. When I build dashboards, I would write a proposal, then I would do user acceptance testing. I would create surveys to get user feedback for my acceptance testing. And when I modified things, I then had like feature requests that I would check off as I modified my dashboard. So everything was very systematic in my approach. And it was like, all right, but technically I'm not supposed to be doing those things. You as a company have decided that program management is its own ladder. And therefore the things that I'm doing that work on that ladder, I'm not really getting credit for. And that kind of sucks. Yeah. So I got my Scrum certification. So at least people can know, even if I may not be doing Scrum every single day, I have the skills that align to this. It's just that my current role may not really allow me to demonstrate the expertise that I have for this kind of work.
Yeah, that's what's up. I got my CSM too for that same reason. But so we're gonna wrap up with this last question here, and it's a big one. Are you ready?
Yes.
You sure?
Okay, not so sure, but you know,
Oh man, no, it's pretty simple though. What you know, you have a lot of great success. Your story is amazing. Your journey is, you know, inspirational, definitely motivating, especially for a future Googler like me, because I know I will be getting hired at Google. So, but nice. What's next for you on your journey?
I would really like to become a thought leader and a champion for equity and inclusion. I really like this space because it's a phenomenal intersection between people that live kind of on the fringes of society. Going back to most tech companies, the concept of scale and scalability really, it lends itself to heavily focusing on current paradigms, which focus on amplifying information or people that come from predominant societies, for whatever that means in whatever part of the world you are. And as people like you are creating more content, I think there's a lot of spaces where we're not doing great by you across the industry, whether it be Google and how they organize the world's information, or how Twitter is participating in the social conversation. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to be able to push forward the information that is now being created now that more people have access to stable internet, have access to writing blog posts and creating tweets. So we are creating information where a lot of these predominant communities were able to create information long before us. And therefore, a lot of our infrastructures continue to support some of that historic information and isn't leaving very much room for people that speak to the niche groups to really come forward. And I think you can tackle that from a lot of different places. And I really want to become more versed in how to tackle that from many different places, as well as being a conduit for integrating more sociological research, anthropological research, user experience design all together with data and product teams and engineering teams. So being someone that sits at that intersection of being able to talk to the engineers of how they can correct products to fix some of these issues, but also having the people that have committed their lives in the like academic realm to be able to inform me how I can better translate this to engineers, and being able to show the impact in the data realm up here.
Okay, awesome. All about the data, we definitely support that diversity, inclusion, you know, community.
I really like that position. I'm not gonna lie. My bad, Jim. I was looking it up and I was like, wait, this looks like something I'd enjoy to do.
Yeah, that's a you know, and I've really been looking into the community builder, community management roles lately, because after building all about the data, I definitely do enjoy it. No, this does not mean I don't want to do data anymore. I definitely will be doing data, but I have definitely picked up a joy for community building as well. But
none of these are not absent of data. I think you always are going to have to prove yourself, or even monitoring the health of a community. What is your attrition rate for a community? What is your acquisition for a new member? What are the views that you're getting on your tweets? Should you be using Facebook groups versus Twitter? What gets out to the most of your audience? So your view rate, your click-through rate. So nothing any of you all are talking about is absent of data. Data really supports all progress in any role, or can make a role more successful in a role.
Yeah, big facts. Definitely appreciate you coming on here. So I was saying, dropping all these gems on us. We gonna charge for this session $99. $99 for the podcast session. If you want all these gems, we're only putting 10 seconds out
for you.
But we gonna
get. It's a pleasure meeting y'all today.
You as
Likewise.
well. Thank you so much for
Definitely.
coming on.
We enjoy your presence,
Definitely.
and we get to the part of our show where we just do a tech titan, where we just highlight one tech individual doing big things for the community. And we got the queen of the tech titans in the building, Shanice. What it
Can I get a
do?
drum roll, y'all?
Where the drum roll at for the tech titan?
It's fine. So this episode's tech titan goes out to Mary Awodele. She operates one of the biggest tech boot camps that's ran by a Black woman, which is My Tech Best Friend. That program helps people get various jobs in the tech industry, whether that be through Salesforce, data, business intelligence, cybersecurity. Mary and her team has personalized learning tracks for each of those specializations. She also connects potential candidates with recruiters and organizations in the industry, securing 100 plus new jobs placements during 2021 alone.
Nice.
She recently partnered with Twitch. So her community continues to grow and change lives each day. I've seen from the beginning, her program and how it's been helping lots and lots of people, especially women, get into tech.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary, we appreciate you and we see all that you do and we thank you for your contribution.
Thanks,
Big
Mary.
fat shouts to My Tech Best Friend. That's my best friend. That's my best friend.
My best friend.
But that's
That
my
should
best
be her
friend.
little
That's my
song.
best friend. But once again, Shashay, we appreciate you coming on. We're gonna make sure we drop all your social media in the
definitely.
chat. Make sure y'all follow and connect with Shashay if you're trying to get in data or if you're just trying to meet a dope individual in general in tech and a whole Googler at the same time. So that's what's up. We appreciate everybody tuning into All About the Data. Make sure you join the Discord if you haven't already. 3,000 plus members. Join us on SQL Saturdays if you're trying to get your SQL skills up. Me and SQL, we not beefing no more. We became acquaintance. We acquaintance now. We ain't beefing no more just for the update. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. I see we almost to 1,000. So let's get there. Get us to 1,000. And subscribe on Spotify, Google, Apple. We about to be everywhere. Just subscribe everywhere. Facebook, LinkedIn, just go everywhere.
All market penetration.
Right? But with that being said, we're going to close this episode out. All About the Data, baby. Peace.